Many, many years ago, I came across a song called Zuviel Hitze by a man named Bloody Stuhl. And it sounds like the name of a group, but actually it's a person. It's Klaus Stuhl, and he was of very minor importance in Germany in sort of the industrial area back in 1983. At any rate, I came across this song again. I hadn't heard it in probably 30 years. And I remember the controversy that surrounded it. Essentially, the song was banned in Germany because of the word Satan. Oddly enough, I didn't think the Germans were that religious, but at any point, he could not get any radio play off of this. And it's probably for good reason also, in that it's not a particularly good song. This was back in the days of the experimental expressionists, and a lot of the stuff they turned out wasn't all that good. Now, I do love Eisters and Neubauten, so don't get me wrong. I like that style, but there was a lot of crap that came out, and this was one of them. This is off the album Einzelhof Friedhof. And the controversy concerns the word Satan. Klaus claimed that the word never actually appears in the song. Oddly enough, this is the only song on the album that's sung in English. So let's go ahead and play it. And now the question is, does the word Satan appear? Now in the first line, it's not too obvious. But in the fourth line, to me, it's pretty clear, despite what he says. Let's listen in. Okay, that sounds pretty clear to me, especially at the very last. Now, let's go ahead and play it again a few times here. Does the word Satan appear? To me, it's unmistakable. But what do you think? And what does this have to do with George Zimmerman and Kyle Rittenhouse? Hello out there. I am trying to get through.
With his powerful brainwaves cradled in the warmth of reasoning, it's time for Johnny Walker Dread to straighten you out on a thing or two. Emanating all the way from exciting Las Vegas, Oklahoma, it's the Johnny Walker Dread Show.
Now, most of you caught on pretty early, maybe right away. The song that you heard is actually Stairway to Heaven by Led Zeppelin. The word Satan doesn't appear anywhere in the song because what you heard was the song played backwards. In fact, the word Satan in the lyrics is complete gibberish. However, once you have been told that the word is Satan, it becomes unmistakable. And this points to a very powerful problem that can occur when confronting evidence, and that is confirmation bias. And we're going to hear a lot of confirmation bias today in analyzing audio tapes of George Zimmerman and analyzing the drone video of Kyle Rittenhouse allegedly pointing his gun at Joshua Zeminski. So let's get on with the show. All right, in this next clip, we're going to hear from a real clown. He's another one of these audio experts, but wait until you hear the science that he describes behind it. You will be astonished. Here we go.
Latest, of course, is this audio, investigation. Who exactly was screaming? A big question remaining in the case. Who was it that was crying for help? You could hear it over 911 when people would call in. You could hear the shrieking on their phone calls. We have a little bit of it, and I want to play. Listen carefully, because you can hear it.
Does he look hurt? I can't see him. I don't want to go out there. I don't know what's going on. So they're sending.
So you think he's yelling help?
Yes.
All right, what is your...
God, I've heard that now 20 times, and every single time it still stuns me.
That's because they think it was Trayvon Martin that was screaming. If they had found out that it was George Zimmerman, it wouldn't have bothered them one lick.
Zimmerman said he was yelling for help as he was being attacked by Martin. Now, according to the original police report, Zimmerman said this: "I was yelling for someone to help me, but no one would help me." A top forensic audio expert has now analyzed the 911 tapes for the Orlando Sentinel. Tom Owen is with Owen Forensic Services. It's nice to see you. Thank you very much for talking with us. Give me a sense of how exactly you do this analysis.
By the way, put your boots on. It's going to get really deep here real quickly.
Well, Soledad, it's done in a manner in which there's a comparison made between a known and an unknown voice. In this instance, George Zimmerman is a known voice. He identified himself on the 911 call. So we know who that is, and then we have the voice of the person who is screaming, and we consider that the unknown because we really don't know who that is at this point.
Okay, so we played a couple of times the screaming. I want to play that and then compare it to George Zimmerman's that we know from the 911 tapes first, and I'm going to ask you a question on the other side of us listening to that. So I know you were able to sort of compile all that different screaming and put it together into one approximately 9-second long clip. And here's a little bit of George Zimmerman from the 911 tape.
Hey, we've had some break-ins in my neighborhood, and there's a real suspicious guy. This guy looks like he's up to no good, or he's on drugs or something. It's raining, and he's just walking around looking about. Now he's coming towards me. Okay. This guy's hand in his waistband.
Now, are you trying to tell me that you can use that voice to determine whether the person that is screaming is the same guy? Oh, okay, sure. Let's go ahead and give this guy a chance, though.
How is it possible to compare two voices when the context is so different? One is shrieking and the other one is speaking almost quietly into the phone.
I can answer that question for you. You cannot do it. And I'll tell you why. When you're screaming, your vocal cords are being extended past their elastic limit. And that's the reason why, after you've been hollering for a while, you go hoarse. You've actually damaged your vocal cords. Of course, they will heal. But whatever the case, vocal cords are designed to operate between a certain range. And when you yell too loud, guess what? You go past that range. It's like taking an elastic spring and pulling it too far apart. You can tweak it, and it won't return back to its original shape. So essentially, a person screaming is not really using the same vocal cords as the person who is talking. Yes, physically they're the same, but they're not audibly the same.
Well, the difference between the old comparisons where you had to have verbatim speech or the people saying the same thing,
right,
and today is the biometric software is able to define three different things: spectrographic information, pitch information, and what we refer to as Gaussian information, or intra-speaker variability. How much space is between words when people speak and so forth. And the software of today, which is in use at NSA and CIA and the FBI, is able to do that and do that very efficiently with no subjectivity whatsoever being.
Yeah, the spacing between the words, I'm sure that that's going to be very accurate between somebody talking in a normal voice and a person screaming at the top of their lungs.
Thrown into the mix.
So what were you able to find?
And that's what this particular software does.
Okay, so from your software, what was your takeaway?
She got a little impatient. Come on, just tell us what you found.
Well, let me just do this for you quickly. We have the tape of Zimmerman, we have the tape of the screams, and then we can start the comparison. And basically, it's going to do this comparison, if you can see the screen now. And it's going to give me some false rejection rates, some false acceptance rates, and a likelihood ratio, okay? And this gray dot over here designates the very lower end of the scale, which in essence is translated as it's not him.
Meaning what? There must be a percentage, of course, that you're determining that you don't believe it's George Zimmerman. What's that number?
Oh, this gets good.
Right. Well, the number, the if it was George Zimmerman, okay, for example, if we could, let me just do something else here. Let's go back and let's just compare Zimmerman with Zimmerman. And let's see what that gives us.
So you're talking about speaking
99%.
voice. Okay, so speaking voice compared to speaking voice obviously
Yes.
gives you something. So yelling voice to speaking voice, whoever is the screaming on the tape, what percentage are you coming up with?
Well, it's 48. It's 48 likelihood ratio
A 48 likelihood ratio. Hey, thanks for clarifying that.
for the screaming voice versus Zimmerman. I just wanted to show you that even if we take the screaming voice and compare that, just so you know, you have something to compare it with, and just do the comparison here. This is what we come up with: 99%.
Screaming to screaming. So let me ask you a question.
The software
Can you believe it? I cannot believe that anybody fell for this. So he compares George Zimmerman's speaking voice to his speaking voice. And yeah, he gets a huge overlap. Why? The software was designed to do those kind of measurements. And again, it's not that difficult to get a very high hit when you're comparing two voices that are spoken within the same context. But then he tries to make a claim that he can compare the screaming voice versus the normal voice by examining the screaming versus the screaming. So he compares the George Zimmerman tape when George is screaming, he gets a 99% hit. How in the hell can anybody claim that because you can make a very good measurement between two speaking voices and that you can make a very good measurement between two screaming voices, that means you can compare a screaming voice with a normal voice? You have to be bone dead stupid to fall for this. Keep in mind, these percentages that he's looking at there, the color coding, it was all designed for cases where you're comparing two voices that are spoken within the same context. It was not designed to compare a screaming voice versus a regular voice. The color coding is attached to likelihood, and therefore they are going to compare very similar voices. For that color to mean anything, you would have to publish a lot of papers. You would have to set up experiments. You would have to set up a probability distribution of picking the right voice out of a random sample. And if you don't have the literature supporting that, you've got nothing. This is a man who just doesn't understand science. He only understands technology.
The software is able to delineate the difference between the two voices.
Now, is this something you...
Truth by blatant assertion. She asks him, well, how does it do it? And he says, well, the software can do it. He just repeats that because he doesn't have an answer.
You do in court? I mean, are you brought into a courtroom to do this exact thing with this exact software?
Yeah, I've testified approximately 300 times in 41 different states.
Oh, 300 times in 41 different states. The number of states must be important somehow. Really? So in other words, the fact that you went to Connecticut one time and then you went to Oregon, that makes this software better? And by the way, if you've testified 300 times, then you may have screwed up 300 trials. Just because you've used it a lot means nothing as far as its accuracy goes. How many innocent people are behind bars because of your analysis?
And not always on voice identification, but the last voice identification was with this software in Connecticut, State versus Davalu, which was a murder trial, and a 911 call was the focus of the trial.
So you say roughly comes out to 48% likelihood that it would be George Zimmerman. What is the...
Wait, 48% likelihood that it would be George Zimmerman. That's almost 50-50. So are we saying that if we had a random sample of voices, that this thing would have picked out George Zimmerman correctly 48% of the time? That's pretty high.
Bar in a courtroom. Is it 78%? It 99%? Where do you say, for you as the analyzer, that it clearly is not the individual you're trying to match it to? What's the number?
Now here he goes. He's going to have this number out and ready, right? Because he's testified 300 times.
Because what would happen is you would see a green dot. Like we saw the green dots when we compared Zimmerman against Zimmerman and the screams against the screams. I don't know if you noticed that, but right here there was a green dot.
Oh, because the dot turns green, that means what? To him, that means, well, it's got to be him, or it can't be him, because the dot changes a certain color.
And it said 99% over here. So if we're comparing Zimmerman versus the screams, then we're getting a likelihood ratio of 48% and a false rejection rate of 12.35%.
So he goes back and repeats these two numbers that he has not even explained. He doesn't know how to answer the question.
And a false acceptance rate of 14.9%. Those low numbers get translated as it's very unlikely that it is the same person.
So
he doesn't answer her question. She wants to know, what about that percentage that you were talking about, that 99%? What should it be? What's the threshold? And he doesn't answer it. Now watch what he does.
So it's what the software is telling.
Yeah. What would that number be, though? Let's say, for you to be comfortable to go into a courtroom, what would that number have to be? Would it be in the 70s, in the 80s? What point do you get the green dot that says, yes, we sort of have a match?
Well, you'd have to get over 60%.
He throws the 60% out there. Who here believes that 60% was defined according to scientific research? It's just a number higher than 48%.
And the green dot.
And the green dot. You'd have to have 60% and the green dot.
Green dot just delineates the software and the filters that are used in the three set of filters that are used in the software.
Okay, quick.
Yeah, he is terminally full of shit. Okay? He doesn't understand how this software really works.
Final question for you before I let you go.
Green.
There's no indication at this point that is or confirmation, I should say, that's Trayvon Martin's voice, is there?
No, I have nothing to compare it with.
So he can't talk about Trayvon Martin because he doesn't have Trayvon Martin's normal voice. So how do we know that if he did do Trayvon Martin, he wouldn't get 30% or 12%?
If I had something to compare, then I would be able to tell you whether that's Trayvon's voice or not.
Have you reached out to, or would you intend to reach out to Trayvon's family and get an audio clip of him in some way, shape, or form and try to match it?
Well, actually, the public is doing that. I've received a number of emails where people have attempted to reach the family, or the police forces as well. Or even George Zimmerman. I would be happy to do an exemplar of George Zimmerman.
Okay.
So let me get this straight. I want to make sure I have it right. The Trayvon Martin family, who obviously have their son on audio recording somewhere on a past VHS tape or something, right? They have to. And they could settle once and for all that is Trayvon Martin screaming and therefore convict George Zimmerman. And they're not giving it to you. Why? Let me go ahead and explain this to you. They've heard the tape and they know it's Trayvon. That's why they're not giving it to you. They know very well it's Trayvon. Get a clue.
As you know, a lot of the conversation that we've had about this 911 call has focused about 2 minutes and 20 seconds in, where I hear a curse and then a racial slur. You know what I'm talking about on this?
Oh, yeah, that's right. The racial slur that when we cleaned up the audio really well, it's pretty clear that he's saying the word cold, or at least according to those two observers. To me, after I was told it was cold, yeah, it certainly sounds like it. I don't know if I would have picked that out without being told first. Again, confirmation bias, right? But whatever the case, it seems to be pretty clear that it's not the word coons. So here we have Mr. Audio Expert who's going to weigh in on that issue.
At issue is that controversial portion of the 911 call where some believe that Zimmerman used a racial slur. Listen carefully to the original recording first.
He's running. Which way is he running? Down towards the other entrance of the neighborhood. Okay. Which entrance is that he's heading towards? The back entrance.
So we asked forensic expert Tom Owen to analyze the recording to see if he can make out what Zimmerman is saying. Now, Owen says he was able to clean up the audio a bit. And to him, it sounds like Zimmerman is saying, effing close. Listen again. We're going to play just that portion, and we're going to play it 3 times.
I didn't hear
so
that.
You can judge for yourself. Watch.
I don't think the word close makes any sense in the context of that telephone call.
So we reached out to a man named Ed Primo, another forensic expert. He analyzed the same portion of the 911 call, and he tells us that he performed what he calls, listen to this, light noise reduction, light equalization, and compression, whatever that means. But anyway, he analyzed the video very closely, and in his opinion, Zimmerman is using a racial slur. Again, listen, here's his version. We're going to play it for you again 3 times. I mean, this really plays into that central question of, was this a racially motivated crime, right?
Well, of
was
course,
this a hate crime?
That's gonna
and
happen,
if
right.
it can be determined that he used a racial slur, of course, that's fuel for the fire, but difficult.
And fuel for the lawyers.
Okay, I want to make a statement here. When you send audio to one of these experts to analyze it, you don't care what the expert thinks he hears. He is not a linguistics expert. His job is to clean up the audio. It is not to weigh in on what he thinks he's hearing. This is really bad. The audio expert should clean up the audio. A linguistics expert can then come in, analyze what he hears, and then come up with some bullshit answer to put away a man for the rest of his life based on this kind of garbage. So far we have coons, close, cold. So if these are experts and they're esteemed in their abilities to do this kind of work, why don't they agree? Perhaps it's because the word is unintelligible. It's just sometimes you hear something that cannot be made out. That's the way it goes. And for people to get on the stand and tell the jury what they think they hear, it is rife for confirmation bias. And of course, the jury, once they hear what the expert thinks he hears, they hear it too. How many innocent people are rotting in jail because of people like Tom Owen? All right, now, what does this have to do with Kyle Rittenhouse? Well, let's take a look. Do you recognize it? You should. This purports to be Kyle Rittenhouse pointing his gun at Joshua Zeminski. And I guess Joshua and his wife, Kelly, like to live in a treehouse because that's where Kyle is aiming, towards the top of the eucalyptus trees or whatever they got growing there in Wisconsin. But whatever the case, everybody looks at this and says, oh my God, Kyle Rittenhouse is shown pointing his gun towards his right, probably aiming it at Joshua Zeminski. And again, it's blurry, it's hard to make out, and you see what you want to see. But what are we really looking at here? Well, guess what? V-Radio did a little video on this. That's what we're looking at, and he pretty well nails it. Let's see what actually is in front of our eyes. There's Kyle. Okay, notice the gun pointing down towards his left like he was carrying it all night. All right, let's take a look. We superpose. There it is. The picture shows Kyle pointing his gun down towards his bottom left, just like he was doing all night long. And of course, right here, that glare, which looks like his hand, is actually a rearview mirror from a car behind him. Amazing. And of course, the prosecution thought this was the smoking gun they had been seeking all week long, right? So now they want to put this into the trial for the jury to see. What are they going to do? Let's go and watch what James Krause does with respect to this image. Okay, so the judge is going to ask a question he should never have asked, and that is, what is this picture depicting? If it's clear, you shouldn't have to ask that question.
What is this depicting?
Judge, this is a image from the drone video. It's the exact area where Mr. Rittenhouse looked and denied that that is him holding his weapon, pointing it at the Zeminskis.
So James Krause is going to happily tell him what he should be seeing. Just like telling somebody what you're hearing is the word coons. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
Okay, now you tell me, where's Ziminsky? Where's the defendant? Where's...
Zeminski is off screen because we asked it to be cropped. The
I beg pardon?
Zeminski is, I believe, off screen. The defendant is right under the sign, right in front of what would be the pole holding up the sign. And right next to him is the fire extinguisher that, as opposed to his actual testimony, is seen on the drone video gently placing on the ground. He then
Gently placing on the ground? Okay.
immediately raises up and raises his firearm and points it at the Zeminskis. The defendant denied this even after watching the drone video.
Of course, he's going to tell the judge exactly what he wants the judge to see.
This is a blown up image. Obviously it's blurry because it is blown up, but you can see the black firearm being held in his two hands, albeit it is blurry.
Mark Richards is over there. He knows what's going on. And again, it's pretty obvious that Kyle is walking along with the gun pointing down towards his left. It doesn't make any logical sense that he would be pointing it any other direction. And V-Radio did a very thorough analysis on explaining why it's not only clear from the image that Kyle is pointing his gun towards the left, it also makes a lot of logical sense given how you wear the strap on an AR-15 and Kyle Rittenhouse's normal behavior that night. It's pretty well set that Kyle was holding the gun to the bottom left, but they see something completely different, and now they're going to try to get the judge to see the same thing. This is confirmation bias, and if the jury gets a hold of this, this would be really, really bad. Luckily, the prosecution was not allowed to inform the jury as to what they should see in the photograph. Like my video, subscribe to my channel, and just be very careful about so-called experts giving testimony on subjects they know very little about.